I'm Amy Pass. I was Amy Slater when Gabe knew me. I met him like in 3rd grade or something when I spent the night at his house with Cherish. Can I talk to you instead of the camera? And I remember Mitch and Sandy reading Anne of Green Gables out loud to all of us. And we went horseback riding. And then I don't think I really saw Gabe again or much. Probably in passing with Cherish until he came on the 9th grade civics class trip with us to Washington, D.C. And then he got to know all of our class, and we all got to be good friends. So then I knew him through the rest of high school. I wrote some things down. So mostly what I remember about Gabe are just sort of impressions, and you'd think that having known him for as long as I did that I would have some really good stories to tell. But really, there's overarching things about him that just left a much bigger impression. I'm not a lot of a details person anyway, so it's not surprising that I forget a lot of the stories in between. I do remember him on our class trip to Washington, D.C. always saying, "Let's talk about the forest." We'd get bored in the van on our drive out there, and we'd be like, okay, what are we going to do? And we played enough card games, and he'd say, I know, let's talk about the forest. And he really was ready to talk about the forest. And I know Mitch and Sandy were always saying he's such a mountain man, and he's so into the outdoors, and that has been true since the minute I met him. It's always been the case. I remember his bright yellow sunshine shirt that he wore all the time in school, and that was such a reflection of his personality and who he was, because he always had this cheery smile and was, he had those bright eyes and laughing eyes a lot of the time. I remember that he used to wear suspenders in high school, which nobody else did, and that was just a unique thing about him. But that was kind of one of those examples of the way that he wasn't really concerned about what anybody else did or being part of the cool people or imitating anybody. He was just going to be himself and do his own thing. He marched to the beat of his own drum, but not in a weird way, just in a like, this is who I am and this is who I'm going to be. And then just to get in a little bit of trouble with the teachers, he'd let his suspender straps hang down, and they really didn't like that. And so it was a little bit of a way to be a rebel in the middle of all of that. I do remember when I was going to college, I left the year before everyone else because I went to Bethel early. And I was kind of sad about leaving. It was getting to be the end of the year, and we were on our way home from a ball game on the bus. And he slid into the seat next to me and he said, "You do know that I'm going to miss you, right?" And I just cracked up because it was so him. It was like, neither of us were the kind of people to really say how we felt about anybody or to be all like, oh, I'm going to miss you. And he was not a person of very many words a lot of the time. So that really stood out to me, that he made a point of sitting down. But it stands out to me because it made me laugh. And it wasn't like, oh yeah, I'm going to miss you. It was just like, oh yeah, of course. You're going to miss me, I'm going to miss you. And then we both just moved on. But that's one of the things I remember. He did a lot of silly things to make people smile. He was always concerned when people were feeling bad about something with trying to find some way to get them to laugh or smile or cheer them up. And he was really a peacemaker. He wanted to make peace between people a lot of the time. And, I just said I don't have a lot of stories, but I do have a few. And I remember one other time when, I don't know what was wrong with the group of girls in my class, but we were all really, hormonal one week or something, and a couple people were picking a fight with a couple other people, just over dumb stuff. And Gabe and I sort of teamed up to make everybody get along. And so I was like, okay, you all need to come over and sit down. But then when I got them all sitting down to talk, I didn't know what else to say. And he said, can we all just be friends? And I remember that, and he probably also tried his line of let's talk about the forest, because that really sounds like him. But that was the way he was. He wanted to get people back together and find a way to make peace between all of us so that we could move on and get along. And I know that he was a force like that in his family too, because Mitch and Sandy have told me that. that's just really the kind of person he was. He was unfailingly kind and just really warm-hearted and generous with people. And that came through even in high school, which I think is kind of unusual to see that in a guy who's 15, 16, 17 years old, and that just really came through as part of his personality. I think he knew who he was a lot more than a lot of people did in high school, and that is the way that I will remember him.
I'm Rachel Newton, and I actually knew Gabe, I think, since we were pretty little. Our parents were friends, and I actually stayed with the Nielsens a couple times while my parents were on missions trips, and Gabe and I kind of had an early connection because both of us have the same birthday, May 11th, and so he was exactly 1 year older than me. But we grew up kind of either in, for a while he was in the same class as me, and then he moved up a grade, and so we kind of grew up knowing each other and hanging out together, and riding the bus to games and doing class projects and all that kind of stuff. But we also you know, played together. He and his family lived in my neighborhood, so we would get together, and you know, a bunch of us would go on walks or just hang out, play baseball, swim, you know, all that kind of stuff that you do with people that are in your neighborhood. But I think probably one of the funniest memories we had from high school days was that Gabe and I and another kid that lived near us, Paul, went for a walk one night, and we decided that we would, anytime we saw a car, we would have to dive into the ditch. Not run into the ditch, dive and roll. And I don't know what prompted us to do this. It was one of those random spur of the moment type things. So for the next like 10 cars, we all would just dive off into the ditch and roll down, and then like wait for the car to pass and then resume our walk. And then it was like, anyway, I have no idea why we did it, but it was a fun memory, one of those kind of weird random memories that you still think about occasionally. And we did a lot of playing ping pong or foosball or jumping on the trampoline, having fires, all those kinds of things. But I think some of my favorite memories are just those times when we got together and hung out, watched a movie, did homework, you know, all those little things. And Gabe and I actually in high school were in this class that Mr. Bonkowski taught, and he and I were married, and so we had to go through pre-marriage counseling together. And so we took all these personality tests and had to compare if we were compatible or not and all this stuff. But it was funny. We had a good time, a good laugh, laughing at how probably incompatible we were as husband and wife. But Gabe was a dear friend of mine, and I appreciate the fact that even though Gabe could probably get upset or frustrated or irritated at times, he was probably one of the most patient people I know. He was incredibly sweet, incredibly caring towards others, and I will miss him dearly. I feel like we've lost a person that really was a blessing to many people, and I just want you to know, Avery, that your dad was an amazing man, and that he, I'm sure, would want you to know how loved you are and how beautiful he thinks you are, and just that you will grow into the potential that he saw for you even as a little girl.